Morning, everyone. Today is the chapter of the Yoga Sutras, and we will begin with a quick review. The first chapter of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is called the Samadhi Pada, and it deals with samadhi. So why the first chapter, jumping to the top of the mountain? Samadhi means actually the inner control of the movement of the mind. And those who are more introspective in nature are qualified to take up this pursuit of yoga to control the mind. Without mind control, we can't reach our goal. So the first basic points of our pursuit are, first, we have to convince ourselves that there is a spiritual life to begin with. And next, we have to find out how to practice that in our day-to-day life, how to make it our own and practicalize it. And finally, we need to learn how to achieve the goal. So the yoga path must follow logic and reasoning, and that appeals to us. Okay, we don't want something that's just concocted. We want something authentic. Otherwise, we should discard it as superficial. And why is that? We use rock solid logic. And when we do that, our conviction then is able to turn into motivation, because we're owning our philosophy. We understand it and we own it. And that makes our motivation strong. And when we develop and use our faculty of introspection, then it is that we begin to pay attention to what's going on in the mind, the movements of the mind, while we interact with the external world. But if we remain outgoing and extroverted, it stands to reason that we'll attend only to external world around us and carelessly overlook the reactions of our mind. So there we go, right? So the difference between the first and second chapters is, in the first chapter, Samadhi Pada starts with what is called Nirodha Chitta. In the Yoga Sutra's first chapter, second verse, Patanjali tells us yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is stilling the thought waves of the mind. Whereas in the second chapter, in the Sadhana Pada, it starts with the first sutra meant for bodhicitta. So Nirodha Chitta requires an introspective nature, one that's focused on our reactions that take place within us. So we need to be a little introspective. And then learning how to reduce those thoughts and emotions, and ultimately stopping their movement in the mind, which obstructs the realizations of our true nature, the Atman. And such aspirants, like us, then become convinced that samadhi, self-realization, is possible, and it is the goal. So bodhicitta in the Sadhana Pada means awakening the mind. And those aspirants with a more extroverted nature have not the capacity to first delve into sadhana for attaining samadhi. So we need to quiet the mind and hopefully have an introspective nature to be able to then see what's going on in the mind, and then have the willpower to begin to control, redirect our thought waves. So they're not as advanced as the more introspective students who are singularly qualified to undertake the advanced directions in the first chapter. The first chapter being Samadhi Pada, jumping to the top of the mountain. So, but by going through certain process in the second chapter, a sincere aspirant ultimately comes to Nirodha Chitta and becomes introspective and qualified enough to undertake the sadhana of the first chapter. So we start with the second chapter and then come around to the first chapter. So through sadhana, an extroverted aspirant strives to bring under control his or her body-mind complex and attain enough mental clarity to handle the subtle ideas which previously were beyond their grasp. So now let's quickly review the two essential teachings in the second chapter's Sadhana Pada. Sutra 1, the second chapter. Patanjali tells us, Tapaha swadhyayeshwara pranidhanani kriya yogaha. Ardent discipline, study and surrender of the fruits of work to God are the preliminary steps toward yoga. So what is Kriya Yoga? The original definition comes from Rishi Patanjali himself, the author and compiler of the Yoga Sutras. He classifies it into three disciplines. First, tapas, which literally means to burn. And what does it mean to burn? It means this is how we purify, purification. In other words, just as heat removes the dirt, so pure essence of a thing is revealed. So also this refers to the organic nature of austerity, tapas, tapasya. In performing tapas, in performing sadhana, there is an internal heat that is created and it is burning off the dross, the impurities, so that anything that needs purifying has to be burnt in order to cause the dross to melt away and allow the pure metal to remain. So heat removes the covering, the dirt, which is adulterating the pure entity. So also in spiritual life, bhakti yoga, karma yoga, raja yoga, jnana yoga, all four yogas, we put forth a tremendous effort, heat, to purify ourselves. And sometimes when we're engaged in severe austerity or more intense austerity, we feel that heat, and it generally comes in the heart area. The heat we are thereby generating within ourselves, a burning desire for God, burns away all the dross of ignorance, all our distractions that covers the knowledge of our true nature. Okay. So there's an intensity that comes in spiritual life, and along with that comes tapas, comes tapasya, and comes heat that's generated to help us further our discipline. So when we strive to develop self-control, for example, absence of jealousy, anger, pride, we're developing a determination within ourselves that was previously absent. We're making a conscious effort to change ourselves. And that determination is a mortification of our senses, a systematic outgrowing of unbridled attachment to the senses, along with the help of a growing culture of refinement, rationality, emotionality, power of ingenuity, and willpower. So there's a brightness that comes into our life through our intellect, through our emotions, through our mind, with sadhana. This is such a logically well-connected process that the spirit behind the practice of yoga is able to achieve a strong foothold, as it were, in our psychophysical makeup. And our spiritual practice becomes a well-integrated part of our inner life. We cannot live without it. We can't imagine what it would be without spiritual life. But if for some reason we neglect or stop our yoga practice, our awareness of the why and how tapas operates disappear, and only a shell remains. Our practice becomes then a shell of what it could be. It doesn't correct the inner self. And sometimes in spiritual life, we go through dry periods and we don't feel like getting up early enough to meditate in the morning, and maybe we don't need to meditate in the evening. And so our spiritual practices begin to decline, and we feel that dryness inside. Next is swadhyaya, the study of the scriptures. And the saints, their lives, and the lives of the seers as well. And we thereby go to the source. By reading, studying, and contemplating the scriptures, we remain constantly in touch with the spirit behind tapasya. It gives us enthusiasm to see how these different sutras are exemplified in the lives of these great teachers, Ramakrishna, Sarada Devi, Vivekananda, the direct disciples of Ramakrishna, and so on. So this study gives us interest, inspiration, and depth to our tapas. Whatever inspiration we obtain through our study, that incentivizes our tapasya. Ishvara pranidhana. That means surrender to the personal God. Ishvara is God, the personal God, and the ultimate source of energy and power in the cosmos. Our concept of God evolves as we begin to evolve and grow in our spiritual life. So our relationship with our chosen ideal changes as we grow in depth in our spiritual life. We may worship a divine form, an avatar or mother goddess, and have a relationship with it. You see, we develop a relationship with a personal God, or we may prefer to feel the presence of God. We may be more adoitic in nature and want to feel just the presence of God, not a name or form, but a spirit within us. Through Patanjali's primary formula for spiritual growth, Kriya Yoga, Tapas, Swadhyaya, and Ishvara Pranidhana, we advance. We outgrow our limitations and begin to interact with the divine. And we begin to interact with the divine in others as well. See, our friends, our family, our spouse. So that interaction with the divine suffuses our thinking to such an extent, our chosen ideal becomes our all and all. As our life begins to change, we grow in confidence about the path we have chosen. Our relationship with our chosen ideal deepens. It's all an organic process. So if we want to establish ourselves in chitta vritti nirodha, that means stopping the thought waves of the mind and become absorbed in the form of God, we first try to adhere to this formula of Kriya Yoga in everyday life. Then along with that, we must strengthen and exert viveka, discrimination, and routinely try to unpack our false identification with this body-mind complex. It's hard work. It's not easy to face yourself. But if we know that the tiny self is not our real self, it becomes easier. So every day we fall under the spell by thinking, my mind, this is all the tiny self speaking, my mind, my body, my house, my car, my country, my husband, my wife, my friends. We're misconceiving ourselves with everything I am not. So with a force of character generated by this tapas, swadhyaya, and ishvara pranidhana, we begin to root out ignorance, avidya, from yet another angle. We begin to acknowledge, I am Chaitanya, that consciousness is light, always shining, the eternal spectator, pure existence, pure knowledge and bliss. That is what I am. So all of this takes vigilance because we habitually misidentify ourselves with reflected consciousness of the mind and all the images I see outside of myself, also the thoughts and emotions going on within my mind, appearing within that reflected consciousness. Patanjali explains our condition succinctly in Sutra 2:17. He says, Drashtri Drishayo Samyogo Heya Hetuhu. This pain is caused by the false identification of the experiencer with the object of experience. Due to our lack of introspection as to the movements going on within our mind, we haven't developed yet the capacity to keep the two categories of words separate. Drishtri, the seer, and Drishayo, the seen. So realized souls, those who have attained that state, who have practiced and realized this separation, and the scriptures depict their realizations. Realized souls know, I am the witness. I am pure consciousness. Just as the sun and its effulgence are inseparable, I am not attached to anything. Whatever passes before me, I illuminate by my awareness. So analogy of this light of awareness is likened to the light of a projector. It helps us when we have a symbol that helps for the mind to connect with these concepts. So this light of the projector shines as the film passes in front of it. And the light going through the film projects color and form on the screen, which is Brahman. All of this is Brahman. And you are but shadows on that screen. See, the screen appears to have a variety of color and forms and faces, but the screen in reality remains white. All this time, you were always Brahman, and I was seeing forms. So the projector is the cause of this misidentification. But the projector remains uninvolved. We're able to see because of the shining light of its projector, the light of the Atman, the light of pure consciousness, which shines on the mind and allows us to think, allows us to perceive. We forget, we think, I am thinking, I am seeing, I am doing this and that. And in the process, we get mixed up and identified with the images on the screen, and we take them to be real. Take for a second example, the big picture of Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is consciousness, ever aware, ever uninvolved, the eternal spectator, the drashti, the seer. What is Drishayo, the seen? The whole panorama of the universe. What is perceivable by our five sense organs, which are Prakriti. Remember, there's two realities in the Sankhya Yoga system. There's Purusha and Prakriti. But in Vedanta, we regard Prakriti as Maya. Okay. But we take the paradigm of Sankhya Yoga and we accept the paradigm of this whole system of delusion in the Sankhya Yoga. So each of the five sense organs has a particular area in the brain where the effect of that organic contact is transformed by the brain and converted into ideas. And those ideas are chitta vritti. So the Purusha shines its light on them for the perceiver. Always remember, you are the Purusha. shining your light on the mind. And how do you know that? Because in our famous guided meditation given by Swami Vivekananda, Calming the Lake of the Mind, we're able to watch the mind. And science tells us that everything we can see is matter. So the mind is matter. But we, the perceiver, without thinking, identify with those thought waves. And we think, I'm enjoying, I am suffering. But actually, our existence is instead pure, eternal existence. The Purusha remains poised in the glory of its true nature. So how to stop this incessant misidentification with the non-self? That's the big question. We can begin by analyzing. How can the seer be seen? How can we see the seer? We cannot. Therefore, we take a mental step back and reassert, I am the witness. The seer can never be seen. We can become one with it, but it will never be an object of perception. So this can be a daily exercise that helps little by little to burn away the dross of our ignorance and reorient and center us in our true nature. Swami Vivekananda's simple pratyahara meditation he gave in his Raja Yoga classes, watching the lake of the mind. Okay. Now we come to the 8 limbs of yoga. Sutra 29 in the 2nd chapter reads, Yama niyamasana pranayama pratyahara dharana dhyana samadhayostav angani. The 8 limbs of yoga are yama, the various abstentions from evil doing, niyama, the various observances, asana, posture, pranayama, control of the prana, control of the breath, pratyahara, withdrawal of the mind from sense objects, dharana, concentration, dhyana, meditation, and samadhi, absorption. Those are the 8 limbs of yoga. So these are 8 different avenues of discipline. And if we follow them, spiritual experience is achievable. Not only that, if we can attain perfection in any one of these yamas or niyamas, other virtues will automatically follow in their wake. So spiritual insight unfolds within us and our character undergoes a sea change and we become noticeably transformed. So each yama and niyama have a root in the whole of our personality. We see in this sloka the enormity of the task necessary for sadhana. To undergo a willful, concentrated, and systematic effort to modify, purify, and quiet the thought waves of the mind in order to manifest the potential divinity within us. Each action that helps us to manifest our potential divinity is sadhana. It is sadhana. Patanjali is laying out the recipe for correcting all samskaras before our involvement in yoga. Perhaps beforehand, our life was not as meticulously ethical as it should have been, and that is why we suffered. See, we made promises we never kept. See, even in little things, Sri Ramakrishna said, you must be truthful. If you say you are coming at a certain time, you come at that time. Everything you do or say must be truthful. That is the greatest austerity. So now, in yoga, we turn our minds in a new direction to build our lives. We might ask, are yama and niyama just a play on words? No, they both have 2 different connotations. The yamas refer to curtailing our negative instinctive movements of the mind. The niyamas are the tendencies that need to be strengthened. So how to put them into practice and nullify the force of past habits. Every time we practice them, they generate a force within us. We feel a strength. When we do something we really don't want to do, but we know it's good for us, it generates a force within us. It's a matter of trial and error. But also our mind must be convinced why it is being asked to cultivate them. Again, our logic and our reasoning are so important. Then, only then, our conviction creates a force within us that can derail the force of past habits. We all can change. We come to Sutra 30. Patanjali tells us, Ahimsa satya steya brahmacharya parigraha yamaha. Yama is abstention from harming others, falsehood, theft, incontinence, and greed. Now, we each have certain tendencies that are very predominant in us. Himsa comes from the instinct for self-preservation of life, reputation, wealth, etc. This is natural. So this tendency, along with other such negative tendencies, is what the yamas help us to manage so we can channel our energies upward. Ahimsa is a counter antidote to himsa. What is that? Well, we must try to cultivate love for all. It's not always easy. And we strive to see one Atman in all. How do we try to see the Atman in all? We can mentally superimpose the form of our own chosen ideal onto the person who challenges us. The practice of ahimsa then brings us the realization of the divine being existing in all. This comes eventually through this practice. Now, how does this happen? Swami Abhedananda remembered one afternoon while the master was lying on his bed, a man was pacing back and forth outside on the green lawn of the garden house. This was at Kasipur. The master said to me, Abhedananda, please ask that man not to walk on the grass. I'm in great pain, as if he were walking on my chest. Abhedananda said, I was amazed when I heard his words and actually saw this. I hurriedly went and asked the man not to walk on the grass. Then the master was relieved. He had practiced ahimsa to such a state that everything became living, including the grass. Perfection in the practice of ahimsa quiets our mind and sensitizes us to recognize the one divine consciousness that exists within all. Then comes satya, the opposite of asatya, untruthfulness. Swami Brahmananda said at one time, truth is the pillar to which you must always hold while performing any action. Once a young monk had a fall, but Maharaj, Swami Brahmananda, forgave him. But when another told a lie, he expelled him from the monastery. Why such emphasis on truthfulness? The root of the word satya is sat, existence itself. If we cannot practice truthfulness, we cannot realize the truth, which is sat. Sri Ramakrishna pointed out another aspect of satya when he taught. True spirituality consists in making the heart and the lips the same. This practice frees us from any deviousness, guile, or cunning. To be simple is the goal. I've never met a holy man or woman who was not simple. It's not to say who wasn't smart, who wasn't a scholar, but very simple. But as Swami Brahmananda also emphasized, tell the truth, but never tell a harsh truth. Rather remain silent. In other words, satya and ahimsa should go hand in hand. Now we come to asteya. Asteya, which is the opposite of steya, stealing. So what does that mean? Don't simply refrain from stealing, but try not to harbor any covetousness, aparigraha, the fourth yama. Swami Pravrajika, my teacher, used to say, remember that nothing in this world really belongs to us. At best, we are merely borrowers. It's our duty, therefore, to borrow no more from the world than what we absolutely need, and to make full and proper use of it. Taking more than what we need and wasting it is a form of stealing from the rest of mankind. Aparigraha. Aparigraha is the opposite of parigraha, acquisition, covetousness. Swami Brahmananda explained what happens if we're prone to acquisitiveness. He said, as long as a man desires the things of the world, it's not possible for him to have any earnest desire to know God. Whereas when we become established in non-covetousness, we, like the richest people in the world, feel no lack. Our mind is free. Also, as Vivekananda observed, renunciation sometimes attracts material benefits. The more you fly from nature, he mused, the more she follows you, and if you do not care for her at all, she becomes your slave. See, one of the great mysteries. Then brahmacharya, continence, is the opposite of abrahmacharya, more broadly sexual misconduct according to one's station in life. Brahmacharya for monastics means chastity in thought, word, and deed. Swami Vivekananda said the soul has no sex. Therefore, with brahmacharya, one is affirming and trying to actualize the ideal. So that is for the monastic. But even lay devotees follow a natural path of brahmacharya. Sri Ramakrishna prescribed that after having one or two children, husband and wife should live in later life like brother and sister or best friends. This happens naturally. So the yamas help us to convert and redirect our negative tendencies into positive tendencies that are helpful for our spiritual growth. Control is different than suppression. Tendencies have to outgrow their limitations and be transformed into tendencies which will advance our spiritual life. These yamas are codes of conduct, how we should interact in society. And they relate to the last 5 of the 10 commandments that Moses gave. Thou shalt not kill, ahimsa. Thou shalt not commit adultery, brahmacharya. Thou shalt not steal, asteya. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, satya. And thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, nor anything that is thy neighbor's, aparigraha. Sutra 31. Jati desha kala samayana bhachina sarvabhoma mahavratam. These forms of abstention are universal vows. They must be practiced without any reservations as to time, place, purpose, or caste rules. Now, this is a tall order. But as Allah's messenger said, do good deeds properly, sincerely, and moderately, and know that the most beloved deed to Allah is the most regular and constant, even if it were little. So God sees the little things. Swami Sarvagatananda reminds us in his Yoga Sutra commentary. He was a disciple of Swami Akhandananda, the founder of he wasn't the founder, but he was the successor to the Vedanta and Boston centers. The problem, he said, is not anywhere but in our mind. We gathered it, accumulated it, made it powerful. The instrument of perception, which you are to direct towards God, is now directed towards the world. In that instrument of perception, there are all the thoughts that you accumulated throughout your life and from the previous lives. Clean this instrument, just like our glasses, which now and then we have to clean. So we clean the instrument of the mind by practicing these yamas and niyamas, these abstentions and observances. Any measure of self-control in this regard is called tapas, tapasya. Sutra 32. Rocha samtosha tapaha swadhyayeshwara pranidhanani diyamaha. Purity, contentment, austerity, study, and devotion to God are the niyamas, the observances. These are the positive ones that direct our lives accordingly. Shocha, the desire for cleanliness, the desire to be pure, both externally and internally. If we don't practice it, it won't harm us. But if we do practice, it will do good to us. So we must learn somehow to regard the body as a temple of God, because God, our chosen ideal, resides within. The mere act of washing the body has a psychological effect on the mind. We feel purified, is it not? And we feel we're a fit abode to receive the Lord in our heart. That's why before we go to the shrine in the morning, we do simple ablutions. We don't have to take a full-on shower or anything like that. Wash our mouth out, wash the face, wash the hands, the feet, and so on. So internal cleanliness is also important. Dirt has accumulated because sometimes we're victims of kama, passion, krodha, anger, lobha, greed, moha, infatuation or delusion, madha, pride, matsarya, jealousy. All these qualities dirty us. See? So these propensities dirty us, and we recognize that they're enemies of our spiritual welfare. We don't want them to harm the health of our mind, the cleanliness of our mind. So what to do? Well, we must learn to regulate our mental food intake by what we read, see, and talk about. Also, Swami Prabhupada used to instruct us. It's not so much what we talk about as how we talk about it. See, you can talk about many things, but it's your level of spirituality that brings a certain level to the discussion. So in this connection, it's immensely important to try to keep holy company. Vibrations of like-minded spiritual aspirants is a spiritual food, a tangible food that we all need. You coming here every day, every Sunday, is a spiritual food for me, you see? And I hope it's a spiritual food for you. Feeling that sense of a spiritual family that connects you to the goal. When you leave here, I hope you feel that spiritual strength that gives you. Once a devotee asked Sri Ramakrishna, "What is the good of holy company?" And Ramakrishna replied, "It begets yearning for God. It begets love of God. Nothing whatsoever is achieved in spiritual life without yearning. By constant living in the company of holy men, the soul becomes restless for God." So we help each other. By being in holy company, we help each other. The vibrations that each person emanates helps the others. Samtosha. Whatever we have, we must try to be satisfied with it. As long as we can live comfortably, plain living, high thinking is the motto. Our thought processes should remain at a high level. We strive to be at peace with ourselves, and therefore don't allow worldly things to disturb us, and do not obsess about any chance of our personal gain. One method is to toughen ourselves by exposing ourselves to life's contradictions so that nothing can shake us, neither pleasure or pain, neither emotional joy nor emotional agony can disturb our equanimity. This reminds me of Swami Trigunatita, who was very afraid of spiders. So what did he do? He gathered a lot of rubber spiders and had them hung in his bedroom until the proximity of these spiders, he was able to forcibly elevate the mind enough so that it was undisturbed by them, and he overcame his fear. Now, you don't have to go to such extremes. The point is that we can control. In this connection, when asked how to attain that equanimity, Swami Prabhavananda once reminded us that there are different levels of seeing. He then described the higher level of a seer when facing a world in turmoil. During a fierce warfare, as the opposing army was engaged with Rama's army, Lord Rama allowed Hanuman to climb onto his back. And what did he see? Hanuman saw Rama slaying Rama. It's possible to have that high vision that all this is Brahman. Tapas literally means to generate heat. This is a byproduct of conserving energy and redirecting it toward union with God, the Atman. Discrimination helps us to control our physical appetites and passions, so we can then experience serenity and equanimity. How can we resist becoming a victim of mindless, restless, and reckless interactions with this world, and then swinging like a pendulum? We do this by toughening ourselves. Joy or sorrow, pleasure or pain, whatever comes, we strive to step back and be the witness. In the flow of life, we try to maintain our poise and tranquility. Now, swadhyaya, self-education. Through the study of sacred scriptures, we expose ourselves to nobler attitudes toward life, which will lift us up from our level of awareness to the proximity of the divine. We do this on our own. During study, we try to hook our mind to the highest common factor of that study. Ask the deep questions about what you're reading. We had a memorial service yesterday. Annapurna, she was an old-time devotee. Many of you didn't have the opportunity to see her in her later life. She was confined to her home. But she loved to study right up until the end. And she would call up the swamis and ask them about the inner meaning of whatever it was she read that she couldn't understand. She was so intense. So yes, when we read or when we hear things, we get to ask questions. Not only get to ask, but we must ask. We must have that kind of mind that tries to make what we are receiving our own. So we're not just sucking it in without awareness or without discrimination. It's good to ask, very good to ask. So the highest common factor of our study is, I must find my true nature. Who am I? We're also studying to learn how to steady the mind and to increase our devotion. The clues can be found in the lives of the avatars and the saints and the seers. There are so many, not only in our own tradition, but in other traditions as well. If we read with regularity, all answers come to us. And it's the habit of many of our monks and nuns to read 1 or 2 pages from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna every day. And when we follow this habit, it seems the scripture becomes living and tuned to us and our personal needs. For example, in 1979, my first trip to India, I heard from Swami Atmastananda, who was the assistant secretary at the time, that Cherrapunji was a hotspot. And his job was relief, providing relief. Fundamental Christians had infiltrated the area and turned tribals against the Ramakrishna Mission ashrama. The ashrama water was turned off, and Swami Gokulananda, the head of the ashrama school, had just fled for his life. He was there at Bellarmine. Swami Atmastananda, assistant secretary of the Ramakrishna Mission, and his job was to go and deal with the tribal chief. Not so easy, he said. We tried everything and failed. He said the tribal chief was a terrible man. Now, Atmastananda came from a very high Brahmin family. The tribal chief was a terrible man. He had killed his uncle in cold blood. His house contained on one side a liquor shop and on the other side a butcher shop. Now that was an exaggeration. It wasn't 2 shops in one house, but you get the idea. He said, then when I was meditating, the thought came, Ramakrishna said in the gospel, when you go to the tribal people, give the head of the tribe tobacco. So, Atmastanandaji continued, the tribal chief came and we fed him and he melted. Just see how in this simple incident, Ramakrishna's teachings guided this Swami's work to unfold in a very pragmatic and upward way. Ishvara pranidhana, cultivation of devotion to the chosen ideal through worship, japa, repetition of the mantra, and constant recollectedness. Ishvara means the Godhead, whatever that may be. Pranidhana means practicalization of those ideas conveyed to us by Shraddha, faith. Shraddha is the interaction in the domain of ideas, the world within the mind and heart. And that means reverence, respect, veneration. Pranidhana is practicing it physically, emotionally, rationally, spiritually. How? We channel these emotions through practical activity. We strive to be one-pointed in our mind so that we will become one with God and engage in constant interaction with God. So these yamas and niyamas we must cultivate and channel into Ishvara Pranidhana. That is the end. And the means are the disciplines of the yamas and the niyamas. There are so many ways we can express our reverence for the divine. Krishna tells us, physically, whatever we do, we must be aware of the presence of the divine within and without ourselves. We begin by making a little space for him during the day, just a little space. Then we end by saturating ourselves with his or her divine presence. Whatever we do by way of work, It's a sacrifice. Or a charity we must learn to do as offering to the divine, whatever we do. Yama means to channel our thoughts and emotions in a new upward direction. Niyama means to cultivate a new flow which will bring us nearer to God. Now Patanjali shows us that when we go to practice, we run into difficulties because our life before our spiritual life was flowing in a different direction. With our previous force of habit, we managed our lives' direction in negative ways. Swami Sri Dharananda, in his Yoga Sutra commentary, explained that force of habit has to be nullified. A new force has to be built up within you. It takes an unshakable resolve, which becomes converted into motivation, which leads us further and further. In this process, there are many obstacles and difficulties. Sutra 33. When assailed by thoughts obstructive to yoga, contrary thoughts should be cultivated. Patanjali gives us a guideline. If a negative thought takes hold of our mind, we should try to make a conscious effort to think its opposite. In this way, with constant practice, unwanted thoughts are eventually displaced. Suppose we become enraged. What then? Rage is unacceptable for a yogin because it disturbs our equanimity. How do we counteract it? With love, affection, care, sympathy. But what if we don't feel sympathy and love? We work from the outside in. By forcing our outer actions to show those qualities, the mind becomes gradually reshaped. You see? How logical. One yoga technique we can perform if we can't physically present before those who anger or trouble us is to sit at the end of our meditation and from our chosen ideal, seated in the heart, send out its light of loving consciousness to those who anger us. First to ourself, we bathe ourself in that consciousness. Second, to those whom we love. Third, to those whom we have yet to meet in our day. And fourth, to those whom we fear or hate. Prayer is another arrow in our quiver of spiritual practices. If we pray to God for love and sympathy, demonstrating through prayer that that is our intention, the mind must come around because our chosen ideal is the witness to our prayer. We cannot hide our actions from our chosen ideal. So also, in diverting our attention from the cause of our rage to prayer, that reverence we have for our chosen ideal will change the constitution of our vrittis. They will become saturated with the reverence I feel for my chosen ideal. Or we may deploy counterthought measures. If there's a strong desire for material things, we can give in charity or awaken gratitude for what we have. If we commit a falsehood, we can confess to the Lord, to our spiritual teacher, or to those whom we committed our falsehood and ask for forgiveness, or what we can do to atone for that misdeed. Now we come to the last verse 34. And I'm going to say it in English, it's rather complicated. The obstacles to yoga, such as acts of violence and untruth, may be first directly created, indirectly caused, or third approved. They may be motivated by greed, anger, or self-interest. They may be small, moderate, or great, but they never cease to result in pain and ignorance. One should counter and overcome distracting thoughts by remembering this. So in other words, there are 81 types of himsa. Directly, three directly or indirectly created or approved, times three, motivated by greed, anger, self-interest, times three, they may be small, moderate, or intense. And that means 9 times 9, that means 81 possible obstacles. So take anger, how to get out of anger. There's an analytical approach. Okay, we'll give you different approaches. I have suffered from anger. I'm embarrassed myself by my anger. I have nowhere to hide my face or words to express my apologies. Can't I outgrow this? No more will I be a victim of this. And we can also cultivate the opposite quality. Someone is angry with me, let me withdraw. That force of habit then becomes eroded without any support from me. So this is ingenuity, to react in a way you wish, not driven by destructive emotions. This becomes an adventure in spiritual life. You know, our life becomes our laboratory. We're able to see for ourselves how these principles work within us, how to get around our negative emotions through vitarka bhavanam. Not only must we be aware of own negative tendencies, such as anger, but the degree in which they become inflamed. Mild, medium, intense. When we see the intensity grow, we must work harder to counteract them. And when we see two people quarreling and we have the capability to stop it, but instead enjoy it, we're also culpable in himsa rather than in ahimsa. You have become a party of violence. Swami Sri Dharananda explained, ahimsa means you don't become violent. You don't incite violence. You don't enjoy others engaging in violent behavior. Now we're going to end with a Ramakrishna parable. And his insightful commentary on the practice of ahimsa. Once upon a time, there were some cowherd boys, and they used to tend their cows in a meadow where a poisonous snake lived, which everyone feared. One day, a brahmachari was going along the meadow. The boys ran to him and said, "Revered sir, please don't go that way. A venomous snake lives over there." The brahmachari replied, "I'm not afraid. I know some mantras." So saying, he continued on his way, but the cowherd boys did not accompany him. In the meantime, the snake moved swiftly toward him with upraised hood. As soon as it came near, the brahmachari recited a mantra, and the snake lay at his feet like an earthworm. The brahmachari said, "Look here, why do you go about doing harm? Come, I'll give you a holy word. By repeating it, you will learn to love God." Saying this, he initiated the snake into spiritual life. "Repeat that sacred word," said the teacher, "and do no harm to anybody." Then he departed. Some days passed, and the cowherd boys noticed that the snake would not bite. So what did they do? They threw stones at it. Still, it showed no anger. It behaved as if it were an earthworm. One day, one of the boys came close to it, caught it by the tail, and whirling it round and round, dashed it again and again on the ground and threw it away. The snake vomited blood and became unconscious. So, thinking it dead, the boys went their way. Late at night, the snake regained consciousness. Slowly and with great difficulty, it dragged itself into its hole. Its bones were broken, and it could scarcely move. Many days passed. The snake became a mere skeleton covered with a skin. Now and then at night, it would come out in search of food. For fear of the boys, it would not leave its hole during the daytime. Since receiving the sacred word from the teacher, it had given up doing harm to others. It maintained its life on dirt, leaves, or the fruit that dropped from the trees. That's all. About a year later, the brahmachari came that way again and asked after the snake. The cowherd boys told him that it was dead. But he couldn't believe them. He knew that the snake would not die before attaining the fruit of the holy word with which it had been initiated. He found his way to the place and, searching here and there, called it by the name he had given it. Hearing the teacher's voice, the snake came out of its hole and bowed before him with great reverence. "Why are you so thin?" the brahmachari asked. You ordered me not to harm anybody," the snake replied, "so I have been living only on leaves and fruit. Perhaps that has made me thinner." The snake had developed the quality of sattva. It could not be angry with anyone. It had totally forgotten that the cowherd boys had almost killed it. The brahmachari said, "No, there must be some other reason. Think a little." Then the snake remembered that the boys had dashed it against the ground. "Now I remember, holy sir," the snake said. "One day the boys dashed me violently against the ground. They're ignorant after all. They didn't realize what a great change had come over my mind." The brahmachari exclaimed, "What a shame! You are such a fool. You don't know how to protect yourself. I asked you not to bite, but I didn't forbid you to hiss. Why didn't you scare them by hissing?" "So," Sri Ramakrishna said, "you must hiss at wicked people. You must frighten them lest they should do you harm. But never inject your venom into them. One must not injure others." And that is the gold standard meaning and practice of ahimsa.
Had a good talk, listened outside. This is my favorite topic, the yamas and niyamas. So I titled my part of this, Living with Others and Living with Ourselves for Spiritual Growth, the yamas and niyamas of Patanjali's yoga. So I think of the yamas as our guidance for living in relationship with others, and the niyamas as guidance to living with ourselves. And obviously they interact with one another, inform one another, enhance one another. And this is just my little kind of summary of what I hope to bring forward in the asana practice this morning. Ahimsa is the first yama and is the basis for all the others. As we practice ahimsa in our asana practice, our violent tendencies tend to present themselves to us for our reflection and ultimately our healing. Cultivating opposite thoughts and actions is a powerful practice to help us. Too far? Cultivating opposite thoughts and actions is a powerful practice to help us transform our unhealthy relationship with our own self. And in doing so, we can see how those tendencies manifest in our relationships with others. With awareness and the use of the other yamas and niyamas, transformation is inevitable. The first two yama are ahimsa and satya. Put in the context of relationships, we could say that ahimsa is allowing someone else to be as they are, and satya is our effort to be authentic and present with whatever shows up. In our asana practice, we intend to allow ourselves to be as we are and to be authentic and present to whatever shows up each time we meet ourselves. When negative thoughts arise, we acknowledge them with curiosity, compassion, comfort, and a promise to be consistent in our practice. So as we go through the practice today, and I will guide you first, as we have done every time, in a body scan, I once again will ask you to find any places in your body that bring up thoughts and just to notice the thoughts that come up. Most of us carry some kind of negativity about some part of ourselves, whether it be a pain that we experience, a shape, maybe we don't like our size or our bellies or our legs, ankle. I mean, it's the full range. We all have these ideas of what we should look like and how we should feel in these bodies that we're living this journey in. So our practice is a wonderful opportunity to look at that and to transform that relationship, to accept ourselves as we are, and to practice even offering compassion and love and acceptance towards ourselves. And with that effort, to then take that into our relationships, because we all live with these kinds of negativities about ourselves. So in doing this for ourselves and offering it to others, we offer the opportunity for others' insight and growth. So we'll begin, as I said, with an intention and then the body scan. So if you would just close your eyes, find a comfortable seated, obviously seated position. And just take a moment to feel your feet on the floor. And feel your seat in the chair. And then bring your hands together in front of your heart for a moment. Feel this shape, this worship shape used by all traditions of spirituality. And just notice what it brings up for you. And then bow your head slightly. And just intend to be authentic and honest with yourself, kind and compassionate as you travel these next 30 minutes, but also to be honest with whatever it is that comes up. And salute the teacher within as you then let your hands rest on your lap. Now take your awareness through your body. Just notice for a moment what part of your body arises in your conscious mind. Maybe it's a place of tension, a place of pain. Maybe it's a part of your body that you dislike or wish was somehow different. Notice the sensations that arise, whether those sensations are physical, from the physical body, or from the emotional body. Maybe the sensations that come up have more to do with an emotion of anger, sadness, guilt about some part of the body. Doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that you notice and you invite it to be present for the time being. And take that neutral witness attitude towards it. As you move in your practice over time, you may even get to the point of inviting it in, cultivating a relationship. It has something to teach us. Notice the center of your heart, the center of your chest, that area of your body. What arises there as you sit with yourself this morning? What is it like to be you right now? Okay. So take whatever showed up for you. And if nothing showed up, that's okay too. It may arise as you do the postures. The attitude that you carry into the postures is what's important. So let's take some breaths now. So take a nice, full, deep breath and let it go. And take another. And then one more. Notice how it feels just to take a breath. Taking a breath is a great way to transform your internal experience. It's simple and it's easy and it's available all the time. So you can open your eyes now. And we'll do some movement. So as you do this movement, keep in mind if there was a part of your body or an idea that you have about your body, just hold that as though it were something outside of yourself almost, something that you could see, hold, and feel. And use it as your guide to notice how things transform and change as you do the movements, okay? And then at the end, you'll have the opportunity to see how you already may be transforming your relationship with yourself, with the body, okay? So with your hands on your thighs and sitting up away from the back of the chair, preferably a little forward towards the front edge of the chair so you have space. So just really giving yourself room. And please feel free to have your eyes closed or open, whatever feels the most comfortable. Sometimes when we close our eyes, we just are more in touch with that deeper self. So we're going to start with cat-cow. It's always a great place to start to move the spine. So as we inhale, we want to arch the back, really arch and look up. And as we exhale, tuck the chin, straighten your elbows if they're bent, and round the back. And as you need an inhale, just go right back to lengthening the front of the body, lifting the chin. Exhaling, rounding, tucking it. And just continue with that movement with your own breath. So everybody's breath length is different. What's important is that you follow yours and just match your movement to your breath. We're not trying to make our breath match our movement. We're matching our movement to our breath. So breath is primary, always. It's always authentic. It always tells the truth, even when we don't necessarily like it. So if we're anxious, if we're in a fear state, there will be a tremor to the breath. If we're feeling excited, we may have trouble catching our breath. So the breath is a great truth teller to what our experience actually is, even when the mind may wish that it was somehow different. So now we're going to continue with this movement, but employ the arms. So take the arms up as you inhale. As you exhale, take the arms down and right up. Inhale, take the arms up. Really stretch, open the front of the body. Exhale. Noticing the quality of the breathing, noticing any judgments. When we're with other people, we're prone sometimes to compare ourselves to others. We're prone to judging what others are doing, if they're doing it at all, if they're doing it correctly from our point of view, if they're doing it better. So we want to also be aware of that. So now we're going to go up just like we did, but this time go all the way to the ground, tucking the chin. Now this time, as you inhale, just bring your hands to your thighs and arch and round. So you're staying very close to your left as you do these little smaller spinal movements. This is very appropriate to the story at the end of Brahmaprana's talk. Inhale, take the arms all the way overhead again. And exhale all the way over. And again, all the way up. Big breath. Exhale all the way up. Let it all go. Also can be helpful to let the exhale out through the mouth, especially if there's a lot of tension. Just make a little sound even. Big breath in, exhale. Let it go. One more. Inhale. Exhale. Yay. Come back to mountain pose. And just with your eyes closed, just notice the energy already in your body. And notice how you respond to that feeling of energy. Is it a positive feeling or does it scare you? Sometimes it can scare people when they feel something. So just try to keep a neutral view. Take your legs a little wide and let's circle the hips. Start to loosen everything up. So we do tend to hold a lot of tension in our hips, whether we're aware of it or not. Just as you circle around, moving your center of gravity from one side to the other side. Just noticing any discomfort in your low back or one hip or the other. Let's reverse directions. As soon again as you feel something that's maybe a twinge or a little pain or something you just weren't expecting, that happens a lot in asana. You think you're fine. Oh, my body is just fine today. And then you start moving, you're like, oh, wow, there's something I didn't know was there. Happens to me all the time. And then let's take 2 more circles and then we'll come back. All the way up. And again, taking just a moment. Takes a little bit of time for the nervous system to get all the way back up to the brain to register what we're experiencing. And for that feeling, that sensation to actually become integrated into the brain. It's after that that we make meaning from what we experienced. We don't need to go that far right now. It's just a little bit of information. So let's side bend. So we'll go to one side and then we're going to come right up and go to the other side, feeling the side waist. So just back and forth, but try to do it with your breath. So exhaling as you go over, inhaling as you come up. So again, remembering that the breath is the guide, not the movement. So we want to try to go slowly enough that the breath is not being forced or hurried or rushed. Now, that doesn't mean you will go at the same rate that I do or that your neighbor does, but we can all trust that our neighbors are going at their perfect rate. And then we'll stay to the right. So when you come to the right, just stay to the right and take your right hand across your body to the left leg. And then we're holding this, but don't hold your breath. So make sure that you're breathing naturally, just feeling whatever it is that you're feeling, noticing what you're noticing, but especially being aware of any negativity or wish to not know what is actually happening. That may sound a little crazy, but it's really common. And then just take your left hand and put it on the arm of the chair to the right and turn. Turn your head back to the left and then back to the right. Do this with great sensitivity and kindness. Most of us carry tremendous tension through our shoulders and our neck, whether we're aware of it or not. And hold the head to the left. See if you can relax your shoulders a bit. Just notice if the shoulders wanted to be lifted, want to raise up to the ears. Maybe that's their habit. And then just releasing the head back, release the arms. And we'll take the right arm, take it overhead to the left and take the left arm to the outside of the right thigh. And breathe. Notice if there's any difference between the right and the left sides. Is this side tighter? Has more sensation, less sensation? And then just take that right hand to the arm of the chair on the left. Sit up tall, turn the head to the left, and then turn it back to the right. And to the left. And to the right. And to the left. And to the right. And then forward and release. And come back to sit. Okay, so we're going to do a little, what's called vinyasa in yoga. Vinyasa just simply means postures connected by breath. So it's a little longer little sequence as opposed to just back and forth like we've been doing. It's very simple. Don't let me freak you out here. So with your legs just a little apart, we're going to take the arms out to the side and take an inhale here. As you exhale, put your right arm on your right thigh and look up at your left hand. And then as you inhale, take your arm over and look at your fingertips, at your left fingertips. And then take your arm up and look down at the floor. And then inhale, pull yourself up. And then we'll go to the other side. So going over, look up at your right hand. And as you exhale, follow your fingertips over your ear. Take your fingers up and look down at the floor. And inhale and come up. Go to the first side again. So following those left fingertips up. And then all the way over. And then take the arm up, look down at the floor. Inhale all the way up to the other side. Look up. And then take your arm over, looking toward your fingers. Take the arm back up, look down. Inhale, come up. Last time each side. Follow the left fingers up. And then over the head. Inhaling. Exhaling, look down, fingers up. Inhaling, come up. Exhaling, look up. Take the fingers over. Exhaling, look down. Inhaling, come up. And then just come back to mountain pose. Close your eyes. Just that little bit of complication is really good for the mind. So may have been a little challenging to follow, but that's okay. That's how we learn, how we change. So just give your shoulders a little roll now. Just notice how they may be changing. Are they getting a little looser? Did that bring a little ease between your neck and your shoulders? So we're going to stand up now. We'll just do, again, what we call sit stands. It's chair pose to mountain pose. Okay, so if you place your feet just slightly behind your knees, chair pose, you take your chest just a little forward and raise your arms up. Now, normally we do this with, well, normally, but in a classical yoga class, you would do this without the chair. So pull back on your shin bones so that you're kind of pushing your hips back and engaging your core muscles. Don't stop breathing, keep breathing. Big inhale and exhale. Now, this time when you inhale, push with your feet, stand all the way up. And then as you exhale, sit right back down. Use the same good form. Go forward, pull your navel back, push with your feet, inhale, stand up. Exhale, pull your hips back and come down. And again, we're going to do this 5 times. This is 3. Sit back and down. So this is so important as we age. So I know none of y'all are doing that, but I am. And I need all of the practice of remembering how to stand up without my arms and then exhale the arms down. Good. So come behind your chair now. Yeah, just feel free to move the chairs as you need to so that you have some room. You don't need a lot of room, but just step back now and stretch the back of your body. So look down at your feet and try to make your feet parallel. And open your hands on the top of the back of the chair and just push down until you feel a little bit of lift in your armpits. That support. And then bend your knees until you take all of the stretch out of your hamstrings. And it just feels much easier on the legs. Now just straighten your right leg. Push your right thigh back and straighten the knee and feel that stretch on the right side. And then bend that knee and stretch and straighten the left knee. So we call this walking your dog. And then bend both knees and straighten the right one again. Feel the stretch. This is usually where people are going, oh my goodness, I had no idea how tight my hamstrings are. And we consider that a judgment. Straighten your left leg. So just try to create space for wherever you are. And then bend the left one, straighten the right one. And one more time, straighten the left one as you bend the right one. Now see if you can straighten both legs. So pushing back on the tops of your thighs, try to lift the backs of your legs up. And as you lift the backs of your legs up, try to keep the weight down into your outer heels. So make the pose very alive and active. And just feel that energy running through your whole system, through your whole body. And then step in, just walk in, get a little closer to the back of your chair, and just stand up and take what you consider to be your best posture. So if somebody, so I'm going to use this just as a teaching tool, not something to take on for yourself. But if somebody were looking at your posture to tell you how you were doing with that, that's what I want you to kind of think to yourself. I'm not going to be doing that. And try to take the very best posture. What does that feel like to you? So think more, how does it feel, than what does it look like? How does it feel inside to stand with dignity and embody yourself fully from your feet to the crown of your head? What are you activating? And what are you relaxing? What is open? What feels closed? Good. Now, just turn to the side so that you can have one hand so you won't be facing me. You don't really need to see me, not important. And you can either just take your foot up to the inside of your ankle with the other knee, with the knee out to the side into what we call tree pose. And then take that arm up. Now, if you're so inclined, you could take that foot up a little higher. Not necessary, but if you want to see what your balance is like this morning, you can just take that foot a little higher up on your leg. And if you're used to doing yoga postures, then, do whatever you know to do in your own body. And breathe, look forward. You don't need me, believe me. This is about you. So just feel what it feels like to stand like a tree. Notice the judgments about how long we're holding this. And then release. And just turn around and we'll do the other side. So just taking the other leg up, knee out. And then that side arm goes up. Now you could also raise your second arm too. Again, like if you want to challenge your balance. It doesn't only challenge your balance, it also challenges your hips. Look forward, don't look at me. You don't need me. I'm like the least interesting thing in the room. Are you breathing? And then release. Good. And then just come back to sit in your chair. And just sit in mountain pose for a moment and notice how things have changed just with the little bit of standing up and moving. See if you can feel the actual energy in your body. Where is it moving? Where isn't it moving? How are you feeling about your body as you have gained more knowledge about about it today, right now. Okay, so bring the hands together again at the heart in prayer. And just bow your head. Thank yourself for taking this time. It takes courage to do this amidst people that maybe you don't even know. And then release your hands, but keep your eyes closed. And I'm going to ask you a few questions, reflection questions. So this is the svadhyaya, the self-reflection part of Kriya. So tapas, that's what we just got through doing, kind of challenging our body by doing things that we don't do, taking it into non-habitual shapes, breaking habits of movement. So now we'll reflect. So what judgments did you notice that you hold about your bodily experience? Am I willing to have a different attitude or experience with this body? If there was one thing I could change about how I live in this body to make it more positive, what would it be? It could be anything. It could be something as simple as drinking more water. Or standing up straighter. And finally, am I willing to come to the body with an open attitude and authentically meet my experience every day? To take the time every day with this body, doesn't have to be a long time, to receive whatever information it may have to share with me about where I am on my journey. And then again, hands at the heart. Thank you for allowing me to share this journey with you. It is my honor, my pleasure to share these gifts that have been offered to us by some of the greatest masters of yoga. Thank you. Namaste. Okay.